Outrage at Queen's Park today over the Ford government's controversial proposed Bill 5.
I am here to tell you that your process is deeply flawed. In fact, it is an insult to our people.
The current status of this bill and the process underway to enact this bill is not going to work for First Nations.
You may have heard First Nations leaders, environmental advocates, and legal experts ringing alarm bells about the Ford government's Bill 5. With Bill 5, Premier Ford is using the threat of Trump's tariffs to give his government unprecedented and extraordinary powers to attack Indigenous rights, environmental protections, democratic oversight, and labor laws. Ford's cabinet will literally have the power to create special economic zones anywhere in the province and then use them to decide who is exempt from the law and who is not, doing an end run around the duty to consult First Nations, weakening environmental rules and labor laws that protect the people and places we love in Ontario. Bill 5 has 10 schedules that, among other things, repeals Ontario's Endangered Species Act, exempts a garbage dump and a major mining project from an environmental assessment, exempts infrastructure and housing projects from archaeological assessments that are important to reconciliation, fast-tracks mining permits, slows the development of renewable energy, eliminates public participation requirements in the oversight of the Ontario Place redevelopment project, and creates special economic zones that override provincial and local laws. That's a lot for one bill. So let's dig into the details. Schedule 9 creates special economic zones that gives Cabinet unprecedented authority to designate hand-picked companies and major projects that will be exempt from provincial and municipal laws. This could include the Planning Act, Environmental Protection Act, Occupational Health and Safety Act, Trespass to Property Act, local zoning rules, among other laws. First Nations are especially concerned because the establishment of special economic zones creates a legal mechanism to bypass consultation and engagement with First Nations governments. Schedule 10 repeals the Endangered Species Act and replaces it with the Species Conservation Act. These changes will move Ontario away from a science-based approach to protecting species at risk by giving the minister the power to decide which species are protected. The changes introduce a new approach to species at risk by relying on a voluntary registry at the discretion of industry. To quote Environmental Defense, currently, industry must receive permits to undertake activities that will kill, harm species at risk, whereas in the future, they simply have to register their intent to kill or harm species. All of this at a time when a number of scientists say that we are experiencing a 6th mass extinction event. Schedule 1 makes changes to the Electricity Act to restrict foreign-made goods from participating in Ontario electricity generation. This provision primarily targets the wind and solar industries because many of the components are made in China. This will likely make it more difficult for Ontario to take advantage of low-cost, made-in-Ontario renewable energy and increase our dependence on fracked gas from the U.S. to power higher-cost polluting gas plants. Schedule 7 exempts developments from the archaeological assessments if Cabinet decides that an exception could potentially advance transit, housing, health and long-term care, other infrastructure, and such other priorities as may be prescribed. Indigenous people and archaeologists are raising the alarm that bypassing this work could erase Indigenous history and set back reconciliation efforts. Archaeologists say that the assessments themselves don't take long. What delays the process is the shortage of staff at the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, which is responsible for reviewing reports from archaeologists. Schedule 3 terminates the environmental assessments for the proposed Eagle's Nest mine in the Ring of Fire and the Dresden dump in Chatham-Kent. Under pressure from local residents worried about the Dresden dump's impact on the Sydenham River and the surrounding area, the Ford government announced a full environmental assessment for the dump just 2 weeks before the government called a by-election in Landham, Kent, Middlesex last year. Now that the election is over, the Ford government plans to break that promise. The Eagle's Nest mine is located 550 kilometers north of Thunder Bay in the Ring of Fire and has deposits of nickel, copper, and platinum. The environmental assessment was designed to provide a forward-looking understanding of the environmental, social, and economic impacts of this project. It gives Ontario a chance to show how mining can be done sustainably in a sensitive ecological area and with First Nations consent. A unilateral termination of the EA robs all of us, including the mining company, of the scientific information for responsible decision-making that protects us from risk and harm. Now, I know this has been a lot to digest, and the Ford government says we have to plow ahead with this bill because we are at economic war with the US. But this bill will do little to tariff-proof Ontario's economy. In fact, it will do the opposite. It is dividing us at a time when we should be uniting to push back against Trump's ridiculous tariffs. Bill 5 opens the door to possible corruption, and it is a direct attack on healthy communities, responsible planning, clean water and air, species at risk, the rule of law, and Indigenous rights.